Hey guys, in this workshop video I'm going to show you some really cool techniques for designing an HMI with groov. We created this HMI screen for controlling the Epic turbine in our demo studio. It works and functions great, but I wanted to see if I could spice it up, so I made this. Let me show you how I did it. I made this without using any third-party software, plugins, or stock graphics. It was all done within groov using some clever layering and opacity techniques. In the interest of time, I'm not going to get into tags. That's covered in other videos. Now, I'm using Chrome on a Mac, but of course with groov you can use any modern web browser and computer you like. So here I am in groov. I've already logged in and I'm in build mode. Here's that original turbine control page. I'm just going to make a duplicate copy of it. I'll change the name to New Turbine Control. I'm going to zoom out to show the stash by checking this box down here. There we go. Now I'll drag, select everything and bring that over to the stash. Same thing here for the handheld view. In the interest of time, I'm not going to design the handheld page in this video. Now I have a clean slate to work with. First thing I'm going to do is change the background from blue to black, because black is awesome. That's already better. And I'll zoom back in to get a better view. Before I start bringing in gadgets and laying this out, I want to create a game plan to help me stay focused. The first thing I want to do is figure out a basic layout structure. I'll do that by creating a grid. I've decided I want this to be a 3-column grid, so I'll drag in a rectangle gadget and make it about 1/3 the width of the screen, like so. That looks about right, but to double check, I'll make another copy here of that rectangle by right-clicking on it and hitting duplicate. Okay, let me sort these out. Well, that was close. Let me just adjust the width a little. There we go, looking good. I'm going to get rid of the fill by moving the fill opacity slider all the way to the left, and I'll change the stroke to something that is easier to see, like so. I'll do that for the others. No need to be precise here, these are just temporary placeholders to keep things organized and looking neat. Great. Now, the next thing I want to do is figure out where the screen height page break is. So I'm going to hit Save All Changes, then I'm going to go back and hit Open groov in a new tab. This will allow me to quickly switch between view and build mode. And remember, it's always a good idea to frequently save your changes. There's nothing worse than spending hours on a design and having all that work lost in an accidental page refresh. Now, this page is only intended to be viewed in a web browser on a 1920 by 1080 computer screen with space at the top to show tabs and a browser bar, like I have here now. I can see that the layout boxes I made are too long and extend below the page break, so I'll go back to the Build tab and I'll adjust that middle box, like so. I'll hit Save All Changes and go back to the View tab. Okay, that looks good. Now I have an idea as to where the page break is, and I can design everything to fit within this one screen. I'll go back to the Build tab and we'll keep going. Next, I want to give this background a little texture to make it more interesting. To do that, I'm going to go to our ever-handy secret SVG library. We have a whole video dedicated to the SVG library, so if you're new to the library, I would highly recommend watching that video. To get to the SVG library, open a new tab, go to opto22.com, in the search field type SVG library. Right here at the top. You should definitely take time to bookmark this page. It's full of really useful images and tools for creating your HMI designs. I'm going to open the SVG Images As Is tab. Under the UI Items section, I want to grab the horizontal radial gradient, hit Download SVG file. That just downloaded to my desktop. You may have your downloads set to go to a different file on your computer. I want to also grab this grid to give my background another layer of texture and interest. So I'll download a copy of that too. I'll leave this tab open for now because I'll be coming back here for some more goodies later on. I'll switch back to the Build tab. Now, the whole trick to making this design work is making sure all these gadgets are layered in the proper order. I want the gradient to be on the very bottom. I want the grid to be on top of that, and then the layout box is on top of that. Then I'll start layering in my gadgets. So first, I'll right-click on each of the layout boxes and select Send to Back. Then I'll drag in an image gadget, like so. I'll click on the image icon in the Properties panel. That opens the image library. I'll hit Add New Images. Here they are on my desktop. I'll just grab both of those and I'll select grid.svg. There we are. This is a bit hard to see since the grid is black and the background is black, so I'll temporarily change the background to something lighter. That's better. Now I'll resize that to fill most of the screen and sit nice and centered on my layout boxes. Like so. I'm also going to change the opacity in the Properties panel to something like 40%. Now, I will right-click on the grid image and send it to the back. Okay, so far so good. Now let's bring in the radial gradient background image. I'll drag in another image gadget, click on the image in the Properties panel, scroll down in the library to find that image. Here we go. Now I'll stretch it out to fill the screen like so. I want this to be the very bottom layer, so I'll right-click and hit Send to Back. Now remember, my layer order is radial gradient, grid on top of that, then the layout boxes. To make sure things don't get moved around, I'm going to drag select this whole group, right-click, and select Lock Position. I'll switch the background color back to black. Okay, looking good. Alright, now I'm ready to start layering in my gadgets. I'm going to zoom out to see what's going on here. I want the turbine to be the star of the show, so I want to make sure it's nice and big and in the middle. I'll start by right-clicking and bring it to the front, and then I'll drag it in like so. Now is a good time to hit Save All Changes. This turbine is an animated indicator gadget. It is tied to the turbine_power tag. When the turbine model in the demo studio is turned on, or true, the image indicator is set to show the animated GIF version of the turbine image. And when the power is off, or false, the image indicator shows the still turbine image. Now, this is a cool turbine, but I know there's another version of the SVG library that looks more like the turbine in the studio. So I'm going to go back to the SVG Library tab, and look, right here you see this link to GIF animation. This is where you can find some top secret animated graphics for your HMI design. That opens a new tab. I'll scroll down to the bottom. Here we go. I'm going to grab the still turbine image first. I'll right-click and save that to my desktop. Then I'll do the same for the animated GIF on the right. All set. Now, back to the Build tab. In the Properties panel, I'll click on the true image, hit Select Image to change that out. That opens our friendly image library. I'll add those two turbine images. I'll select the wind turbine fast.gif. I'll close the editor. And I'll do the same for the false. Select image, scroll down to that wind turbine still image, close the editor, and we're in business. I'll hit Save All Changes once more. Now I really want that turbine to pop, so I'm going to give it a little background frame of its own. I'll drag in an oval gadget like so, resize it to be bigger than the turbine, make sure it's nice and round. I can use that grid image to help make sure I'm nice and square. Okay. Now I'll drag that off to the side for a moment so I can grab that turbine image and make sure it is sitting on the top of my layer stack, like so. I'll bring the circle back in, resize a little. Okay. Now I want to change the fill color. To keep things nice and matchy, I'll use the eyedropper to select the same color blue that's used in the trend. And I think that fill is a bit much, so I'll bring the opacity down as well. Something like that looks good. I don't need the stroke, so I'll set this opacity to 0. Now that still doesn't stand out for my taste, so I'm going to add another background frame. I'll right click on the blue circle, hit duplicate, make it a size bigger. Now I want to make the fill opacity 0, and I'll bring back that stroke. I'll pick the opposite color of blue, which is orange, and I'll fatten that stroke to something like 2. Okay, there's no missing that turbine now. I'll hit Save All Changes again. So now we have a turbine that looks like the turbine in the studio. It's nice and big and obviously the focal point of this HMI. When the turbine is turned on, the animated turbine graphic will be displayed, and when the turbine is off, the still image will be displayed. But I want to go a step further. Notice in our orange circle we have the ability to show or hide the image based on a tag. Let's try that out. I'm going to right click on the orange circle, duplicate it, center it up. I'll change the stroke to green, and I'll make it a bit bigger. That way when it's displayed it covers up the orange circle. Then I'll go to the visibility section. I know the turbine power tag is under demo centered, digital output. Scroll down, here it is, turbine_power. I'll hit update gadget. Okay. Now to make sure that's in the frontmost layer, I'll right click and hit bring to front. Hit save all changes again. The next most important visual elements in this design are the trend graphics. I want those on the top of my layer stack, so before dragging them into the stash, I'll right click and bring to front. I'll drag that back in and resize to fit my layout boxes. Same for the other trend, bring to front, resize, reposition, make sure everything is nice and lined up. Okay, now I want those to stand out a bit more too. So I'll do what I did for the turbine and give those guys a little background frame. I'll drag in a rectangle gadget, resize just enough to cover the trend, and I'll reduce the fill opacity to something like this. I'll change the stroke to a medium gray. Now I'll pull this to the side a bit so that I can bring the trend to the front. Then I'll duplicate that by right-clicking, put that over on the other trend. Okay, looking good. Next, I'll bring back the text labels for those trends. First, I'll right-click to bring to front so I can keep track of my layer order. I'll start with the wind speed. I'll set the text size to 8 and tone down that text to a medium gray color. Resize a little and reposition. Same thing for the market price. Set the text to 8. I'm going to shorten this text a bit too. Current market price still makes sense, but with fewer characters. Set the text color to gray, resize a little, get that all lined up, hit save all changes. Next up, the buttons control the turbine. This auto mode button switches between auto and manual modes, where the turbine is switched on or off automatically based on actual live data coming from the California ISO website. And the other button is the on-off switch for when the turbine is in manual mode. Pretty cool stuff. There's a great video that we made showing how all this was set up. These buttons work fine, but I want to spice things up a little. I want to change it from a plain button to an image. But first we'll need some images. So let's go back to the SVG Library tab. I'll go to the Customizable SVG Images tab. Down here at the bottom are some UI images. I like this rocker switch, so I'll select the left one, hit Prepare for Download, save that to my desktop, close that. Now I'll get the right version. Download. Okay. Now I want to make another version of that rocker switch so that when it's on it's green and when it's off it's red. To do that, I'm going to go over to here and customize the colors. I want this right to be the off position, so I'll change the light color to red. So I'll click on light, then grab a nice bright red, hit apply color. Okay, you can see what that looks like. Now I want the left side of the switch to be lit up green when it's on, and a dark green when it's off. I'll select dark, give it a nice dark desaturated green, hit apply colors. Okay, looks good. I'll download that. Next, let's do the on position. Select rocker switch left, select light, set it to bright green, set it to a dark desaturated red. Looks good, and download. Now, back to the build tab. Let's start with the auto mode button. I'll change the display mode to image. Click on the image. That opens the image library. I'll add those 4 rocker switch images. I'll select the gray button for this one, and I'll make the off switch the left gray rocker switch. Okay. Now I want to make sure that this is at the very top of my image stack. It's really important to make sure that any gadgets that the user will interact with, like buttons or value boxes or interactive threads, sit on the very front of your layer stack. If there's another gadget in front of the button, the user won't be able to click on it. Next, I'll do the manual turbine control. Change the display mode to button. For the on image, I'll use the green rocker switch. And for the off, I'll use the red. Right click and bring it to the front. Drag that in. Now I'll resize and reposition those two. Make sure they are all lined up. Okay, looking good. Let's hit Save All Changes. Let's go back to the View tab and check to make sure everything is still working. I'll switch the Auto button to Manual Control, then switch the Manual Control button to On. When I switch the turbine on, the rocker switch goes from red to green, the turbine image switches from still to animated, and the green circle appears on top of the orange circle. Awesome. Let's go back to the Build tab. Just a few more things left. Next, I'll bring in the Run Turbine Value gadget. This one lets the operator set a dollar amount to run the turbine based on a real Cal ISO price. So we want to make sure it sits on top of our layer stack. So I'll right click and bring it to front, then I'll bring it in. The reason why I bring the gadget to the front before I drag it in is because I have a whole bunch of gadgets on the work area, varying degrees of visibility. And I don't want to actually bring in a new gadget behind something else. I'll change the text size to 8 and the color to medium gray, but that input box is still too big, so I'll change that to small, resize a little. Next, I'll do the same for the turbine timeout. First, bring it to the front, change the size to 8, the color to gray, change the input size to small. This button is configured to reset the turbine to the automatic control after a set number of seconds. I'm going to add some text to this one to make it a little bit more clear. Drag it in, resize, reposition. I'm going to bring the logo to the front, drag it in, resize a little. And for those other gadgets, I don't need those for this demo, so I'm just going to delete them. Hit Save All Changes. Okay, but those rocker switches don't seem to be grounded or anything. They're just kind of floating all around. So I'd like to give them their own background frames. Let's go back to the Build tab. Now I could just use another rectangle gadget, but I want to try something a little bit more complex. So let's go back to the SVG library one more time. For this one, I'm actually going to go to the Make Buttons tab. Now I'm not actually going to make these background frames buttons, but I can still use this tool to make some cool shapes that are more complex than the standard rectangle and circle gadgets. First, we need to remove the rocker switch from the Customize window. Then, under Button Background, I'll set the shape to Rounded Rectangle with a ratio of 7:4. I'll leave the corner radius at 10. For the fill, I want to use a gradient. I'll set the left side color to black and the right color to medium gray. I don't want a stroke outline, so I'll set the opacity to 0. I'll go back to the top, change the name to BG Black Gray, hit Prepare for Download. And I'll make another one, but this time I'll set the gradient from gray to black. Rename it BG, gray, black, download. And one more. This time I want the fill opacity to be 0. I'll set the opacity to 1, and I'll make the stroke blue and the width to 2. I'll rename that BG blue and download. Let's go back to the Build tab, and I'll drag in an image gadget. Click on the image in the Properties panel to open the library. I'll add those 3 images, and I'll select the BG gray-black image first. I'll place that over my Auto Control rocker button, and I'll bring down the opacity to something like 40. I'll bring that over a bit and bring the button and value gadgets back to the front. Then I'll slip that background box back in behind the button and reposition a little. Next, I'll right-click and duplicate that image gadget. Bring that button and value gadget back up to the front of the layer stack. Reposition everything. Okay. I'll change that image to the black to gray gradient. Scroll down. There it is. Now, because the manual control button doesn't work unless the auto control button is switched to manual mode, I want to make it really clear to the operator which button is active and which isn't. To do that, I'm going to use an image indicator gadget. So I'll drag one in. I'll set the tag, which is under Demo Center 008, numeric variables. Here it is, turbine underscore auto or manual flag. I'll select it and hit Update Gadget. Now I'll add the blue border image. Scroll down, there it is. Okay, I want this one to have a blue border when the auto switch is set to auto. So I'll change the match type to be exact, 1, and close the editor. Then I'll add another image, choose that same blue border. I'll change the exact range to 0, but this time I'll change the opacity to 0 as well. Hit Close Editor. Now, I'll bring the button and value gadgets back up to the front and slip the blue border in behind. I'll make a duplicate of that blue border and I'll change its properties. For tag equals 0, I'll set the opacity back to 100%. And for the tag equals 1, I'll change the opacity to 0. Close the editor. Bring the button and value gadget up to the front of the layer stack. And bingo. Let's hit Save All Changes and check it out in the View tab. Now, when the operator switches the Auto button to Auto, the blue border appears around it and disappears around the manual control box. Pretty clever. I think I can add a bit more to take things up a notch. Let's switch back to the Build tab. I want it to be really clear to the operator when the turbine is running, so I'm going to add an LED gadget to show when the turbine is on. Drag that in, add the tag, under Demo, Digital Outputs, Turbine Power, Update. Delete the label, set the size to 5. True color to green, false to medium gray, reposition. Then I'll drag in a text area gadget, change the text to running, set the size to 6 and the color to gray. Line to center, and straighten it out a bit. And while I'm at it, I'll make some labels for the rocker switches. Duplicate, call this Autopilot. Reposition. Duplicate again, call this Manual Control. Reposition. Duplicate it again, change this to Auto. Change the size to 8. Reposition. And I'll make another copy, change that text to manual, straighten it out, and one more copy, change the text to run, and put it here, make sure things are nice and lined up. I'll make one more copy and change the text to stop. Let's straighten things out. And let's go back and make sure all those buttons and value gadgets are on the very top layer stack. I'll duplicate the text one more time. I'll give this page a title. change it to Epic Turbine. Let's make that more epic by making it bold and italic and 26 point. Put that up here. Looking good. Hit Save All Changes. Now, I know there's a live webcam pointed at the turbine in the demo studio. I want to add that too, so I'll drag in a video gadget. I've already got that URL saved to my clipboard, so I'll paste that in. I'll use Groov as a proxy. There we go. Resize, reposition. There. Now I have a live view of what's actually going on the ground. Okay, I think I can delete those layer boxes now. Select Unlock, Delete. Same for the others. Looking good. But there's a bit of space at the top right that could use some love. I see in the live demo webcam that there are 3 stack lights, one on the left, one in the middle, and one on the right. I don't think I have enough space to add controls for all 3 stack lights, so I'll just stick with the middle one for now. I'm going to drag in an LED gadget. I'll find the tags for that middle stack light under Demo, Digital Outputs. Here it is, stacklight _ red. Update the gadget. Let's get rid of the label. Set the size to 4. Make the true color bright red and the false a dark red. Resize a little bit. I'll duplicate that for the other lights. Change the tags, colors, etc. Same for the green. Nice. But the LED just shows the status of a tag. You can't control it. To do that, I need to add a button, but there really isn't any space for buttons. I'm kind of full up here. Well, check this trick out. I'm going to make some invisible buttons. To do that, I'll drag in a button gadget. I'll update the tag to the stack light red. I'll change the display mode to image. Now, I just need to find a square-shaped image. Anything will work since I'm just going to make it invisible. So I'll grab that gray rocker switch. I'll resize and place that on top of the LED gadget. Same for the off image. And I'll set the opacity to 0 for both of them. And I'll duplicate and do the same for the others. Now, before I hit save, I want to go back and make sure all of my buttons and value gadgets are sitting on the very top of my layer stack. So I'll go through and double check those one last time. Hit save and check out the final design in the View tab. Awesome. Here's the before. Here's the after. What do you think? It's nice and neat and organized. Everything is really clear and easy to read. When I switch to auto mode, we get the blue border. And I can make my run price something below the live market price, like so. And the turbine turns on. It spins, and I can see in the live webcam that it's working. Let's try the manual mode. Manual switch is now highlighted. If I hit stop, the turbine stops. The running light turns off and the green circle turns orange. I can change the timeout to something like 3 seconds. Turn the turbine back on. Wait 3 seconds. And it stops. The run price also resets to the 222.22, and my trends are all updated as expected. Let's try out those stack lights with those invisible buttons. I can see them turn on and off in real time with the live webcam. Awesome. I hope I was able to show you some cool new techniques with Groov. Be sure to bookmark that SVG Library page and check out all of its great features. Now, I made a copy of this HMI and put it on demo.groov.com so you can try it out yourself. Log in with the username of trial and the password Opto22. You can find it down here at the bottom under Sandbox. Play around with turning the turbine on and off. Try out those stack lights. And while you're here, be sure to check out all the other fun GroovView pages. Remember, if you ever need help, support is always free and always with a real Opto22 engineer. Check out our other GroovView videos and our free online training. Join the forums and get support from the Opto22 community. Have fun, guys.